Just in case no one's heard me say it before, I love light gun games. The big flaw, of course, is that you're stuck in place while you shoot enemies. Not too dissimilar from some virtual reality games these days, but I digress. Along comes Capcom with a novel idea: fast and accurate light gun shooting paired with freedom of movement. If they can pull it off, then it sounds to me like a match made in heaven. Unfortunately, I'll never know for myself. The light gun implementation for Resident Evil Survivor was removed from the US version of the game, allegedly in response to the tragedy of the Columbine High School massacre a year earlier. And as anyone would know, playing a gun game without the gun itself is a miserable experience. But I'm willing to give anything a fair shake.
Resident Evil Survivor.
Resident Evil Survivor follows the adventures of a helicopter pilot who has lost his memory following a crash. It's revealed early on that his name is Vincent Goldman, and he has caused a zombie outbreak on a remote island town owned by a pharmaceutical company, the infamous Umbrella.
No, this is me. I am Vincent. It was all my fault.
Vincent needs to navigate through the island town, fighting zombies and monsters while uncovering Umbrella's dark secrets along the way. The plot is a complete waste of time, and the presentation is a mess. I know the stories in Resident Evil were never meant to be Oscar-worthy, but Survivor hits a new low. The voice acting is on par with the laughably bad original Resident Evil, which is shameful considering that Resident Evil 2's acting wasn't half bad. So this is a pretty big step backwards.
Vincent.
Who is this? Vincent? Who's that? Wait. Am I Vincent?
Vincent, you are a murderer. A murderer.
A murderer? What are you talking about? Answer me! Who did I kill?
The characters, as few as they are, do almost nothing to keep the plot interesting. Lily and Lot are just exposition dumps, and the plot twists are seen coming from literally a mile away. Out of every game I've reviewed, this one pains me the most to stick to my no spoilers promise. You just have to trust me, this game is really dumb with its plot twist. The graphics aren't that bad, but they don't look great up close and in first person. The PS1 already has that infamous graphical error where textures would look warped at certain angles, and Survivor has it pretty bad too. The 3D models of multiple enemies are also taken straight out of Resident Evil 2, including zombies, lickers, the plant monsters, and even the trenchcoat tyrants. And I do mean trenchcoat tyrants in a plural sense. The number of these guys in this game comes off as comical, sometimes with 2 of them at once. One area in particular features 4 of them appearing one at a time. It's so ridiculous. Survivor's own original enemies include whatever this is. I'm guessing it's a hunter that uses guns. I take back what I said earlier. This is so ridiculous. I don't even know what to say. This has to be the goofiest Resident Evil character aside from Tofu. The menu doesn't fare much better. All of the game's weapons, ammo, and healing items are thrown into the same scrolling list at random. There's even multiple entries to back out of the menu with the return option. So believe it or not, it's actually easy to get lost in a freaking list of all things. The gameplay is yet another low point. Now, I'm not asking for much, I get it. First-person shooters in general were still in their infancy on consoles, and Capcom was creating arguably the first ever off-rails light gun game. I commend their experimentation. Regardless, it sucks. The tank controls are used for movement, forwards, backwards, and turning side to side. Running into something, like an item or door, will proceed with the appropriate action automatically. To help speed up the process, points of interest such as items and enemies can be centered on screen with the tap of the L1 button, kind of like how auto-aim works in Resident Evil 2. Pressing the fire button at any time will bring up the reticle, which signifies that the gun is ready to fire. and movement is then replaced with aiming. There don't appear to be any weak points on enemies, as far as I can tell, so it's often best to simply fire away at the chest until they go down. There are several branching paths which are naturally implemented into the game's progression, which is pretty cool. Most doors outside of a building are one way only and help add some replay value with different enemies and unique documents that flesh out more of the story. But any of the game's positives pale in comparison to the overwhelming negatives. The biggest one being that this game is slow. It's so slow and so incredibly boring. The developers essentially took the general pace of battles in other Resident Evil games and shifted the camera to be first person without changing anything else. This might have been fine on paper, but in practice, it takes forever. First you have to get into position, then ready your gun, then line up your shot, then slowly fire away, one bullet at a time. It takes twice as many steps to attack an enemy in Survivor than it does in past games. This is especially awful because with a light gun peripheral, you just want to fire away like crazy. But the fire rate is kept purposefully slow. It's so frustrating. Also, like other Resident Evil games, there's a variety of weapon and ammo types to choose from. And while your handgun has unlimited ammo, the other weapons need to be used wisely. I sure hope you have a blast navigating that menu because you switch out and reload weapons a lot in this game. Or you can just run away. The game rarely blocks your path anyway. Unlike other Resident Evil games, there's hardly any backtracking either, so you're rarely punished for leaving enemies behind. It's not always allowed, a lot of areas in this game are very tight corridors, but whenever some place is open enough, you're better off just running past. The enemy AI isn't that impressive either. Occasionally, they'll just turn your back on you and walk away. I don't get it. Why is it this bad? The only good thing I can say is that it's not a long game. It can be easily completed in just under 3 hours, and part of that has to do with the fact that it's extremely linear. Forget the maze-like mansion or police station from previous entries, there are so few rooms to explore here that it's impossible to get lost. But if that's the case, then why is this game off rails in the first place? It probably would have been fine as a traditional light gun shooter, maybe with power-ups strewn about in the environment to act as different weapons. It's so easy, the concept writes itself, but Survivor is what we got and it's not worth anyone's time. It's just an incredibly slow and shallow light gun game with a troublesome menu, boring levels, brainless AI, and quite possibly the worst story in a franchise that was never going to get any awards for its story in the first place. If you really desperately want to give an off-rails rail shooter a try, then I guess you can try Time Crisis 4 or Resident Evil Dead Aim, neither of which are any good either, but definitely do not waste your time with Resident Evil Survivor. Thanks for watching my review on Resident Evil Survivor. If you'd like to be updated on my future videos, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter, or check out my Discord page.